Are you a Bernie Sanders supporter?
Yes, definitely, clearly.
So, here in New Hampshire, Tuesday, what's it like to be at the site of his first primary victory?
Well, I mean, the excitement was pretty amazing. I think it's pretty cool to have just to have like all this energy focused in such a small state comparatively. I mean, I basically grew up in California, so you kind of just get lost in like the sea of everyone else at some point, you know? Like this would probably be a much bigger event similarly, so kind of cool to get an upfront thing. I did some canvassing today, so definitely feel like it's making a bit of an impact there. So it's pretty good.
And especially in such a close election where it seemed like it was coming down to the wire, and all of a sudden, Buttigieg starts closing in. Does that make it more worth fulfilling for you to know that every vote really does count?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely noticed that it does seem that both Klobuchar and Buttigieg had their support largely in the suburbs. People were kind of biting their nails for a bit there, but I was able to see, I think, that the suburbs were kind of played out. As I was seeing, like, the city centers and the more rural areas seemed more good for Bernie, and as it turned out, that's how it played out. So,
Ricky, I want to thank you so much for the time. Sarah, you said you're an undecided voter, and all of a sudden, so what was it about Senator Sanders that made him the candidate for you?
Well, honestly, I think he's the only Democratic candidate that can beat Donald Trump, which is a huge factor for me, as well as his healthcare policy.
Now, Joe Biden was the other candidate that people kind of saw as the safe choice. Why not Vice President Biden?
Well, for one, his behavior towards individuals with disabilities was a really huge factor of why I personally didn't want to vote for him. And I think Bernie has a lot of other important ideas that Biden just didn't have.
And tonight, for I think Sanders supporters, it got pretty stressful. The senator starts out with a big lead, and then the mayor, Buttigieg, closes it back in. How tense was it up here in the stands waiting for the results to come in?
It was pretty intense. We were just like refreshing our phones, looking at the percentages, and it was just like really close by like decimal points, but I'm really glad he won.
Sarah, I want to thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Are you a Sanders supporter?
Yeah, he's the candidate that you kind of just have to support now. You don't really have a choice anymore.
And what is it about the senator that makes him the candidate to support?
So there are two factors. First of all, the primary thing to think about is obviously the President of the United States right now is absolutely demonstrably a threat to this entire planet at this point. And I'll get to the second point in a second, but basically no one else understands how to actually talk to Donald Trump and call him out for the liar that he is. Everyone's so focused going on defense that they're not willing to go on offense and actually drive at their points toward his rhetoric, which is completely divisive. What we need is a candidate that can actually get voter turnout out there and unite everyone. But the second point, and arguably the most important point, is because he is the only candidate that is actually going to fight the greatest threat to human civilization, climate change. The only candidate that is actually taking it seriously. If we don't get our act together now, we might not have a tomorrow.
I've got to ask, was it nerve-wracking here in the I guess the mosh pit as the vote started tightening up, and it looked like the mayor was going to give the senator a run for his money there?
Yeah. So great point. So basically, the vote coming in, we all knew that most mainstream media is trying to give as much support to Amy Klobuchar or Pete Buttigieg as much as possible, and you just hear negative story, negative ad all the time for the Sanders campaign, and it just goes to show that this is the second major white state in a row where we're seeing a plurality of a demographic type of voter. When we go to Nevada and South Carolina, where Sanders is going to have a huge amount of support there because of the Latino vote and the African American vote, Pete Buttigieg is going to have a much harder time there. He certainly has momentum right now, and I could eat my words, and he might perform well there. But in regards to South Carolina especially, if Joe Biden were to drop out, I still suspect Pete Buttigieg would place below Biden. in South Carolina.
Joseph, I want to thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for talking.